All right, it's now 12:10, so let's get started, shall we? Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to my presentation. I'm Sarah Singh, Senior Geospatial Systems Analyst at Waka Kotahi. So what that means is I'm responsible for the management and maintenance of the geospatial platform, and that includes our integration capability by way of FME Desktop and FME Server. Today I'll be talking about how at Waka Kotahi FME is used to underpin the development of data, research and analytics, and it helps facilitate the day-to-day management and maintenance of an enterprise geospatial platform. So the context to all of this is that in early 2020, we were approached by the business concerning aging on-prem infrastructure and operating systems moving towards end-of-life support. At this point, FME had already been adopted and by a handful of teams across the agency and serving as a critical business function to fill that gap and support independent production systems with no inherent mechanism for synchronizing the data flow between those systems. To continue delivering a performant and reliable experience to users of the geospatial platform, that would mean that we would have to upgrade as well as move to the cloud. So we began this journey upgrading from FME 2017 up to 2021. And ultimately, this would enable us to better empower the enterprise function. Obviously, this came with successes and some lessons that we've learnt, which I'll be exploring throughout the session. It's my intention that this presentation is geared towards those of us in government, transport, geospatial professionals, or just any other FME users that are faced with migration and upgrade challenges or concerns. So it's my hope that our experience in using FME Desktop and FME Server will demonstrate what a successful enterprise platform is capable of and how to successfully carry out a platform upgrade and move to the cloud at the same time as continuing to provide users and consumers the same quality of service with little to no disruptions. At Waka Kotahi, FME helps us to understand and deliver on our values, strategies, and ultimately our direction in providing one integrated land transport system. Our purpose is moving together, which is characterized by a forward momentum and constant future thinking. For this, digital solutions play an important role in delivering system and customer outcomes now and into the future, because it's through the use of data and information that we can improve business performance. And as we consider the system as an integrated unit, this network, infrastructure, people, and services, we see that shift in enablement for the business. Our adoption of FME bridges the gap between those systems, environments, and databases. And bridging of that gap, we are connecting the people, the data, the systems more effectively and efficiently. The dynamic adaptability of FME has meant that we are able to meet current and what we understand future needs of our users to be. This means that we're able to focus on providing that one integrated land transport system, which helps get the most out of life and supports business. So by combining technology and organizational capabilities, we can enable safer and sustainable and connected journeys. We know that digital solutions play an important role in this. At Waka Kotahi, FME is integrated with the development of data research and analytics, as well as facilitates that day-to-day management and maintenance of the enterprise platform. We support a range of desktop users across the agency, as well as partnering with external consultants who we collaborate with to deliver on projects and outcomes. We also have FME servers configured in a test UAT and production environment. So how do we successfully run that enterprise capability at such a scale of the organisation as at Waka Kotahi? Our experience has shown us that success is in establishing and maintaining a performant and reliable capability comes down to the process, management and maintenance. As I mentioned, FME is used by multiple teams. Its adoption is to fill that bridging gap. So working with and supporting the needs of teams across such a large organisation, it's our reality that workspaces may have been created by many different authors. An author may be internal staff, they could be a contractor, a consultant, one of our partners, anybody really that's going to help us deliver the outcomes. And as these persist and continue to be in operation, we do find that over time we may be faced with supporting and maintaining legacy workspaces created some time ago by someone that's no longer engaged with us, the platform administrators. So how do we continue to understand and support those? Well, early in our adoption of FME, we recognised we would need to create meaning and order from all of these disparate applications and the potential ways in which it could be used and the possibility for that to spread. A way in which we could influence and implement structure to the workspace creation and production process. And what does that look like? So if we take it back to maximising consistency and wanting to simplify a wide range of workspaces, we identified a need to standardise, and that would ultimately lead us to the creation of our FME standards and guidelines reference documentation. This is provided to anyone that comes to us asking for the software, as well as when the business is engaged with others to provide an FME workspace. So we make this available to our partners that we work with. Implementing the standards of best practices, as we refer to them, with so many users does sound like something that's much easier said than done. If you've ever had to collaborate with anyone on an automation, you'll understand that there is always more than one way to go about it, and that certainly when it comes to FME, there is more than one solution, more than one way to achieve a goal or an outcome. So with this in mind, our standards are accompanied by a set of guidelines, which are informed by Safe Software Community Best Practice, and the standards and guidelines material just serves as a reference. So for the workspaces that are going to be put into the FME server or otherwise productionized. So that still enables our desktop users who are going about using FME within their own bubble to use it as best suits them. But without going into too much detail, I want to touch on some of what those standards and guidelines look at, which make our enterprise deployment successful. So things like workspace design, which discusses the use of private and published parameters, the use of bookmarks to demarcate specific tasks within a workspace, brief annotations to document key characteristics of a transformer, just at a very high level, and the use of what we refer to as sub-processes, which are also documented in our reference material. That could be something like a pre-configured task, things like a metadata updater or an emailer or notifications framework, these reusable segments of a workspace that form what could be considered a template for future workspaces. The standards and guidelines are also complemented by a change management workflow, which guides a user through the migration pattern of a workspace or workspaces from development or test to UAT and ultimately up into the production server. The handover process is designed to advise our users of the software, what version, what build it needs to be configured to, any internal requirements, how to perform connectivity tests, and how platform administrators are going to review a workspace before migrating it through. This review and change management process requires demonstration of obviously a successful workspace completion, consideration for error handling, including notifications, and a well-annotated workspace design that could be understood by anyone in the team of platform administrators. workspaces that require scheduling are also documented in our shared calendar. And what we've found is that having an open, viewable calendar that also includes time blocked out for regular platform maintenance and other regular updates that happen on the platform allow us to keep track of any potential conflicts ahead of time. With the rate of change at Waka Kotahi and the growth and uptake of geospatial tools and technology, the FME environments have had to play catch up to ensure stability for a dynamic ecosystem. This is what maintenance of a platform entails. Our responsibility is maintaining a consistently performant and reliable platform to our users, which means that when they log on in the morning, the data behind the web mapping application has been refreshed and means that we've done our job in building and setting up the infrastructure that allows the background workspaces to complete it successfully, regardless of scheduled or unscheduled maintenance outages. This is an area which relies on all of that pre-thought and planning that goes into the early stages of processes and management. It is the initial ground laying that really determines successful maintenance. So here we come to a case study where I'll demonstrate how we're enabling the enterprise. We're highlighting here the property team at Waka Kotahi who have seen success within the agency with the help of FME. Waka Kotahi New Zealand Transport Agency manages over $1.5 billion worth of property for the purpose of land transport investments such as expressways. Accurate and up-to-date property data is essential to managing and maintaining these assets. Processing over 35 million records, FMS Server is used to integrate the SAP property portfolio with CoreLogic and LINS data, which is then loaded into ArcGIS Enterprise hosted in Azure, where it is presented to decision makers and consultants. This capability has recently been extended even further with the use of FME server applications, which have enabled property consultants to submit data for review directly to the Waka Kotahi property managers, who are able to load a web application and see these represented visually on a map. And that's the example that we're looking at in front of us. All apologies, I realise that it's tiny. But essentially what we've created is a workspace that is made available to our external property consultants in the form of an FMS server app, which we see on screen here. Where data is submitted in the form of a zip file and more than likely contains a shapefile. Data is then either accepted or rejected based on a series of requirements determined by the business owner, such as, first of all, does it contain any data, or is it a blank upload just for testing? Does the data submission match a valid schema? Are essential fields being populated? And also a test and cleanup of the supplied geometry with error handling throughout is able to account for these. And if the requirements are not met, we've enabled data streaming to notify on screen either access or a failure of a data upload. Where a submission has been successful, this is uploaded to a web map that we see at the bottom here, and an email gets sent off to notify the business owners that new data is ready to view and to submit feedback on. At the same time, we also store an offline record of that submission, which is then also archived and cleaned out after 90 days. If for whatever reason the submission has failed or it doesn't meet some of the requirements, a record is flagged for further investigation. In those cases, that a separate report is generated, attached to an email, and also sent to the business owner just to say, hey, this one looks a little strange, you're definitely going to want to look into that. The implementation of this workflow has greatly benefited the property management team, where previously these were being received in sometimes just in a basic spreadsheet. So structuring this, providing a direct link to that visualization, and allowing a external facing web interface that consultants can automatically send through and get feedback on has seen great success for their team. FME has provided a multitude of benefits to property and being a business critical function. As I talked about earlier, with the high rate of change at Waka Kotahi and the growth and uptake of geospatial tools and technology, the FME environments had to play keep up to ensure stability for a dynamic ecosystem. This came to a head in early 2020 when we were confronted with infrastructure and operating systems moving to end-of-life support and aging on-prem infrastructure, which would imminently be switched off. At the time, we were operating on Windows 2008 virtual machines, running FME Desktop in Server 2017, and it was clear that in order to continue to serve the business, our stakeholders, and even the general public, that we were going to have to upgrade. So this is where our upgrade and move to the cloud experience really began. Keeping in mind that while this work was taking place, we had to maintain those operations that continue to provide a consistent, performant, reliable platform to all of our users, and meant we would need to be working in parallel, so standing up a separate environment, separate server, which we would migrate onto the newer version of. So how did we do that? We started with an audit. We went through and assessed all of our ETLs. At the time, some of which were enabled via FME server scheduler, and we still had some operating just through a task scheduler calling on an FME batch file to run. This gave us performing this audit is what gave us the insight to understand the full lay of the land, record what was running where and when, and where we were likely to need to upgrade a workspace. From this, we could then divide our workspaces into two categories, a lift and shift approach or a capability migration. So where a workspace was considered straightforward, reliable, met all of our standards and was well understood, all we needed to do then was a lift and shift, so focusing only on upgrading individual transformers we needed between the two versions. And thankfully, this was the case for the majority of workspaces. However, the assessment did reveal that we were left with I think it was only about 2 workspaces where we would need to do a capability migration. And what that means is a workspace was so highly complex, we're talking in the order of hundreds of transformers to support a critical business function. And we would need an alternative solution as they would continue to serve a purpose to the agency, and we couldn't leave them behind. That simply wasn't an option. So reframing our thinking, pivoting towards more of a capability migration, and maintain the non-functional requirements with the help of our integration partners at Seamless, we were in a position to simplify and redesign the process so that it was still continuing to provide the business the information that they needed, but in a newer version. And what was that process? Well, if we're looking at how we move to the cloud, we broke it down into 3 stages: the prerequisites, planning, and the execution, and that execution then being repeated again for all of our 3 environments: a test, a UAT, and a production. But what are the prerequisites, planning, and execution that we followed? Prerequisites, these were working with Waka Kotahi technology to build a suitable cloud infrastructure that continued to meet the same configurations that we had set in the previous version. Implementing a brownout blackout period so that we were stopping all changes to new workspaces. We were able to understand exactly what was happening without anything new coming through. Complete the workspace review, download those install files, set them all up, install new certificates on the server, all of those basics. We needed to start from the bottom again. Then it came to planning. So at go time, it was a matter of installing all of the softwares, configuring Azure AD integration, a service account, SSL, proxy, and then running our connectivity tests and validating those install files, again, for UAT production and test, obviously. Then it comes to migration, so the actual execution of the project. Each workspace identified for lift and shift would need to be opened in the newer version of FME, all those transformers going through one by one, upgrade, testing that those are then working, performed within test pointed to test, UAT pointed to UAT, and finally prod pointed to prod readers and writers. Migrated capability workspaces were comparatively very easy. These were simply built in the newer version, tested, and then deployed to each server. What did we learn from this? Well, what was our experience like? Preparations and planning were essential, but so is being able to adapt to new things outside of our control. During this project, we encountered bugs as well as Log4j, which the rest of the world did, and that meant that we had to go back, backtrack on a few things and plan a new way forward a few times over. Having a clear definition of requirements, prerequisites, and a plan allowed us that confidence that we needed to pivot when presented with these issues which are outside of our control. As part of our workspace upgrades, there was functionality identified that had been left behind between 2017 and 2021. So by standing up a newer, more modern platform while maintaining the existing meant we had that direct comparison available throughout the testing process until a suitable workaround was established. So having that old and new platform side by side allows us to maintain business operations as usual without an outage or a disruption to users. And what might sound obvious is testing and retesting. With the number of changes and configurations that we had to go through in the process, constantly testing and ensuring the functionality required to support the platform, network, and other connectivity, maintaining these was critical for our business purposes. For this, I collated all of the endpoints across the workspaces we maintain and put them into a single workspace, which we could run and rerun to confirm things like, do we have access to internal networks? Can we access external networks and APIs? Essentially all of the web and database connections and as well as being able to send emails. So that's the workspace that you see on screen here. All of the bookmarks categorizing the different endpoints to internal and external networks, which we could then run, make a change to the proxy, run again. And so final thoughts. Digital solutions are and will continue to be important in delivering system and customer outcomes now and into the future. An upgrade is not a one and done exercise, although at the end of it, we all feel a sense of relief. As part of the ongoing management and maintenance that goes into providing a consistently performant and reliable platform, upgrades and planning ahead for these is something that needs to be built into everyone's regular BAU. The planning and preparation that went into the work over the last 12 months is something that has set the foundations for us for this going forward. And now I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank my team at Waka Kotahi, as well as our integration partners at Seamless who helped make all of this possible. So a big shout out to you all. Now I've got some time left to answer any questions. Otherwise, you're welcome to contact me directly. My email address is there on screen. Thank you very much.